Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Heirik Chamishi, Halacha Hey, and Halacha Vav. We're going to be learning today Daf Mem Zayin. We left off on Daf Mem Zayin all the way on top of the Amud in the beginning of the Gemara. So basically, what we're going to have for the majority of today's Daf is the Gemara unpackaging both parts of the Mishnah of Halacha Hey. First big topic of Halacha Hey was the concept of Belila, of perfect intermingling. So as we learned that when it comes at the example, the case the Mishnah was speaking about was an ani that is going from door to door. And sometimes he's gifted dates or individual dried figs. If the ani is going to go ahead and he's going to mix them all up together, there's going to be certain scenarios in which we will say belila, which means that his intermingling was done perfectly, or let's say like this, there is an even amount of distribution, and therefore, even though every date might have come from another Am Haaretz, but since it's all perfectly mingled, when he's going to be ma'ased from his mixture, he's going to be taken the right proportion for the right proportion, so you are okay. So we're going to learn a little bit about this concept, and we will actually see two approaches. Ultimately, this is a kula to say that there was such a perfect intermingling, not by liquids, but even by solids, is something that we say only by demai. And the Gemara is going to explain Rabbi Yehuda's qualification. And we said right away when we learned in the last year of the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda is not arguing with the Tanna Kama, but Rabbi Yehuda is qualifying the Tanna Kama, that even though we are makel by demai, we only say that the person who mixed it perfectly as an even distribution, only bisman shematana meruba. And we left it for the Gemara, and that will be basically Daf Mem Zayin Amid Aleph. Daf Mem Zayin Amid Beis will move to the second part of Halacha Hey. Right, when a person buys something from the Sitoin is the wholesaler, that a wholesaler, even though the wholesaler, right, you don't know who he buys it from many different people. And even if you made two purchases, even if the product came from the same container and it was the same type, still lo ya'aser mizeh al zeh. What the Gemara will introduce is a new case that the Mishnah never spoke about, and that will be halakech ben hachenvani. You're buying wine, let's say, from a storekeeper, and we'll learn in the Gemara inside certain similarities between a storekeeper and a sitoin. Halacha Vav, which we will have on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Beis, is going to move on to a balabas selling his own produce. In other words, we had the palter, the manpoil, the sitoin will have the chenveni. What happens if someone is selling produce that they grow? Therefore, sure, we presume that whatever they are selling is that which they grew, which is good. So it's coming from one Am Haaretz. However, if a balabas has a butka, he has a booth in a market, if he's selling in a market, even if he grows that product, if you sell in the market, that's a rule when it comes to, you have to supply to your customers. We may not make such a presumption. We'll see how far we can get on Daf Mem Zayin on the base. We're going to learn a very important Mishnah in Machshirin that's speaking about vegetables, whether they are by default, muchshar, lekabel tuma, or not. We're going to see a three-way machlokes tanoim, and how all of that will tie into our topic in the Mishnah, Halacha Vav, b'negeya, a person who's buying product from the balabas in the market. Good. Chavra Daf Mem Zayin Amid Aleph, all the way on top of the Amid. All right, the topic of Belila. So says the Gemara that Rabbi Yossi b'shem Rav Pidoya and Rabbi Yoina in the name of Chizkiyo, both of them, they open up the topic by saying, Ein Belila. We don't say that when you intermingled various items, you did it evenly. We don't say that. We only say it. And let's look inside the top. In other words, what were they talking about? They were not talking about our Mishnah. They cannot argue with our Mishnah. They're Amoirayim. So it says the Pnei Moshe le'inyan chadash v'yashin. There's another rule that we never spoke about yet in great length, and that is, just like you can be ma'ased, mi chiyuv ala ptur, mi ptur ala chiyuv, you can't be ma'ased from product that grew this year for product that grew in the previous year. Right, that's the Abba Rosh Hashanah in the beginning of Masechtas Rosh Hashanah. Why do you have to have a Rosh Hashanah Le'ilonis? For what? Also, for it to leave Arla, I know that. But for the dinim of being Ma'aseh, Ma'aseh Behema, Echad Be'elu, for this, that you can't be Ma'aseh Chodesh V'Yashim. The aim is Aseh Mizelzeh. Now, what happens if you mixed wine or oil, says the Pnei Moshe, from this year's with last year's? Now that you mix liquids by liquids, obviously, im yesh b'shneim kfi hacheshben. Why? But what are they implying? Concludes the Pnei Moshe. Now hold on. When they made their statement, now look, before we go on in the Gemara, look inside the top Marafulda. In our Mishnah, we're saying Belila. Right away. Top Mara, Elaliyain, Avalova Yodash, Avalova Yavash, Umas Nisan, Bidmai Hitiru Biyavesh. So one thing is clear: Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yoina, they for sure subscribe that only by the Mai were we lenient. Now, remember that. They're for sure. Now, what about Rabbi Yechanan? Says Rabbi Yechanan, Amar. Now, I disagree with you. Even when it comes to dry foods, at Kizesin, if the dry foods are very small, it makes sense, guys. The smaller, the easier to mix one with the other. The chunkier, the larger, the harder to mix. So if they are from the smaller size up until the size of a kazayis, yes, nivlalim, which means not they can be blended. They can be evenly blended, even distribution. Only if it's bigger than a kazayis, then do we say that no believer. Now, what about our Mishnah? Masnisan pliga al Rabbi Yechanan. Because our Mishnah's examples where we do say belila was both by the case of tamarim, dates, and groigerois, dried figs. And they are both larger than a kazayis. And the Mishnah says, now the Gemara really could have asked an Rabbi Yossi. Actually, the Gra, in Bir Hagra on the left side, he has the girsa that the Gemara is actually what the Marafulda said is from the Gemara. The Gemara is asking on Rabbi Yossi. But we can go with our girsa. No, it's Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yoina for sure have to say b'demai hikilu. The Gemara is wondering whether we have to say the same thing even let Rabbi Yechanan. And yes. So the Gemara gives two answers. One answer is, I'm sorry to note that Rabbi Yechanan will hold that we don't have to be lenient by a demai. When did our Mishnah say that when you have the ani received tamarim and groigeros, and if he mixed from the different donors, he could be ma'aser l'chatchila because of belila. Pasarlah at kezesin. We're speaking about a case where either the dates or the figs, the recipient, he squeezed it so small that it became the size of a kazayas or even smaller. Look inside the third marafulda. Pasarlah at kezesim shadorsim at sheyu kezesim and then ubaylalim. Now that's a doiche. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yosef, that even according to Rabbi Yechanan, b'dmai hitiru. And let's go with that. I'm sorry.
If the ani gets figs from someone, they're big and they're small. They're not going to mix anyway. But if he's getting figs that are all big, why can't they mix?
Because they're not all perfectly the same size.
Right. So, and the little ones are also not all the same size.
Correct.
But we say the little ones can mix, and we're saying the bigger ones.
I think it mixes better. There's liquids mix perfectly. We're speaking about even mixture, Kevin. I don't need for the mixing for one to go into the other. I need to make sure that after I mix them up together, and now I took off the 1%, I have an even amount in my 1% for the other 99%. That is the even mixture that we're talking about. Okay.
Thank you.
Now, says the Gemara, let's go with the second answer. No, it's not only is it bevadai that Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yoina, who generally hold that belila, even belila, is only by liquids. They must say b'dmai hitiru or hikilu. Even according to Rabbi Yechanan, we're going to go now with the Rabbi Yossi's answers. B'dmai hitiru. I'll prove it to you that we're treating the whole demai leniently, and that is now. That's the way the Gemara is going to approach. What exactly is Rabbi Yehuda saying in the Mishnah? Indeed, Ki Rabbi Yehuda. We learned that our Mishnah Rabbi Yehuda Omer as a qualification, as an explanation. He's just qualifying the shita of the Tanakama that Amosai. When do we say that Belila, and therefore it's okay, even though it came from different Amei Haaretz, only Bisman Shematana Meruba, only when they gave the Ani a relatively large contribution. Aval Bisman Shematana Memoetes, but if they gave a smaller contribution, even there, Ma'asa Nikol Echad V'Yechad. Now let me ask you a question. What difference does it make? Kevin, if we say that when people mix a bag of figs and it's going to be so perfectly intermingled, that if I'm going to take a handful at the end of it, I'm going to be taking it equally from every single part of it. There's going to be an even distribution. Let's use that word. What difference does it make if the aniyim gave the ani lechatchila a large or a little amount? I'll tell you the difference. Really, when do we say there was mamish even distribution, Kevan? Only by liquids. It's not shaykh to say it by solids. Elama, we're being lenient. Why are we being lenient? Why are we lenient by the mind? Because Roiv Amei Haaretz were ma'ased everything. Now let me add a component. The added component is that when a person is generous, how do I know a donor is generous? He gives a lot. A person who's, and now this is not a foolproof halachically based logic. It's like circumstantial evidence, which should not be enough. By the Mai, it's enough, because by the Mai, lachatchila, roiv amei haaretz take off everything to begin. When a person is a generous donor, a generous person, we can make a presumption, will also give up trumas umaisis. If a guy for ani knocks on your door, not you, someone, a stingy person, and they barely give him a fig and a half, as that person, there we should say, ooh, this person maybe didn't separate trumas umaisis. That will be the only way to explain Rabbi Yehuda.
Got it.
Now, normally we don't use such a logic. Either we follow Roiv Haaretz for Ma'aseh. That Yochanan Kohen Gadol says you have to be chayish to the miyuta, because there was a big miyuta that don't take off all of the trumas umaisis. So you got to take across the board. But still, you find this unique. This is a proof that there's something lenient about the Mai, and even by the Mai itself, only when you see the donors were generous. So now all of that is leading us to lean to the concept that no one will hold of belila by solids. The Dema Yikilu. And now the Gemara wants to add another layer in the proper understanding of what Rabbi Yehuda is saying. You have to know what he means. It means even when we say that there is equal distribution when you mingle something, that also has to be explained. Says the Gemara. Let me tell you what Rabbi Yehuda is saying, which really means what the Chachamim are holding. That the way in the Yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai, they explained that Rabbi Yehuda is talking b'shas hagoyren, meaning the question is, we want to make sure that will be the key. I'll say it by heart. When do we say, even that when we say that there is even distribution, when you intermingle various salads together, if you're taking what you received from A, and you're taking what you received from B, and you're taking what you received from C, and what you're taking is the same amount. So if you have, let's say, 100 pieces from each one, and you mix them up together, here we can say that you perfectly mixed it up. But if you received from A 100, you received from B 50, you received from C 25, and I don't mean that the gap is so big, it's just a different quantity. No one will say that there's even a perfect intermingling. And then what would you have to do? Let's say the smallest donation was 25, then this is all Rabbi Yehuda not qualifying the Tanakama. When the Tanakama says the words that boilel v'noitel means take 25 of each and mix them together. Not take everyone's donation and mix them together. Because you have to take a number, which will be always the weakest link in the chain, the smallest number.
Say, you don't know how much, say there is the pile, right?
The ani knows. The ani knows.
What I'm trying to understand is how do you get the number of 20?
How what?
But but the person who's responsible for the Meiser, how do you get to the number of 25?
Okay,
you get a 5. My question is like this: you get
let's say
right?
Reuven is an ani. Reuven is an ani. He doesn't get a 5
from each 5, right?
The ani got from different people different numbers. Then the ani can only mix it if he's taking the lowest number. So it should be equal now and take that amount from the other donors. In other words, you have to take the same amount from each donor and mix it together for you to say that you can make a perfect intermingling. And by the way, we trust the Amma Aretz for that. Remember, we only don't trust the Amma Aretz if he's saying something b'negeya, whether he tithed or not. An Amma Aretz is a trustworthy person, but we don't trust him when it comes to Trumas Omaisis. But when it comes to this question, we will trust him. Let's go inside. Meaning, he's giving an example. By the way, many people have the girsa meya sa'a. Whether it's mi meya sa'a or meya sa'a, it means, just to know what, during the threshing season, it's like when the stock market goes up, the likelihood for a person getting a larger donation is bigger. Because people, when there's more cash flow, that's when people generally are more generous. When Shas HaGoyden is when people gave the most. We're speaking not money. We're speaking about they gave the produce. In other words, since he received the same amount from everyone, that's when he can mix it together. But if he let's say this ani had 2 donors and each one gave a different amount. They gave a different amount. So let's say even if we're going to give 10%, we're going to go with one guy gave 10% from 100, one guy gave 10% from 50. In other words, he got different numbers. The ma'aseh mechamishin, see that? In other words, ma'aseh mechamishin means if the ani had 2 donors, Reuven gave the ani 100, Shimon gave the ani 50, he can take 50 from Shimon. That's all he got from Shimon. If he takes 50 from Reuven, then he can mix it together and be toidem ma'aseh together. Because he began, and the Gemara, by the way, what the Gemara is going to do now is common in the Babli. It's very rare in the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi normally is very brief. Here we're not being brief. The Gemara is going to go to other numbers. Then ma'aseh mikol echad v'echad. Gewaltig. Beautiful. And by the way, ma'aseh mikol echad v'echad, Kevan, that's for you, because the minimum, you can't say, well, if everyone gave 1, mix the ones. Can't do that. Because let's say you'll have 100. You're taking 1% for Trumas Meiser. That's mamish min aptur ala chiyuv. This one for sure came from one source. The others for sure came from another source. That's the whole problem. You're not allowed to do that. Can't be ma'aseh demai from one person on demai from another person. So really, the way we are learning the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda is saying 2 things. First of all, when are we lenient? When we know the donors were generous. In addition to that, that you can only mix solids and say you came to a perfect intermingling if you are mixing items from different sources in the same quantity. If it's not the same quantity, you're not going to perfectly intermingle it. None of that.
Can I ask a question on that, Rabbi?
What was that?
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
So we're saying, if I understand correctly, that if 4 people give you 50 and one gives you 40, then you're only allowed to mix them together as far as 40 is concerned. And then the other 10 from the first 4 guys, you have to take off from each one of those.
No, I disagree with that, because then you take 10. Now you have 4 piles of 10, which came from 4 different people. So it's also equal. Then you mix that together.
Okay. Either way. But can't you also just take the 4 50s, mix those together, and take your meisters from that? And your separate group of 40, take from that.
100%. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The bottom line is that when you ask a person, you think if you can make a perfectly even distribution when you mingle something? The answer is not 100% perfect. We're not halachic when there are certain halachas. We're not saying that in the Metzias it happened that way. Even by liquid it's more. It's a halachic concept, all based on the premise that really, the whole demai is chumrah. So therefore, we can say, okay, you mingled it, and even lachatchila, and you made it perfect in the middle. Okay, moving on. Daf Mem Zayin Amud Beis is referring now to the second part of halacha hey. The Mishnah spoke about someone who's buying from a wholesaler. A wholesaler for sure buys from different sources. You buy from a wholesaler. So when you make one purchase, you are allowed to be toidim u'ma'ased from that purchase. You can say that what he sold me came from a lot that he got from one person. If you made two purchases, even on the same day, but you made two different purchases, even if this wholesaler took it out of the same container, and it's the same item, you have to say maybe what you got in the second purchase came from another supplier, and you can't do one on the other. That is what the Mishnah said. However, if the wholesaler tells you, and you believe him, no. What I sold you this morning, what I sold you this afternoon, what I sold you yesterday, what I sold you today, it came from the same supplier. You believe the secret. Okay. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yirmiyah boye. Now here, the word boye is not an inquiry. In Babli, it's always a question. Here, it's a statement. Afilu hishbiach lo mikachai. This is true. That what? That you believe the wholesaler when he tells you that what he sold you now and what he sold you before came from the same supplier, is even if you, the buyer, you praised the wholesaler for the great quality of product that you made in the last purchase. It's a chiddush. Means if you buy something this morning and you come back in the afternoon and you tell the wholesaler, wow, that product was special. If he's a dishonest person, what do you think he's going to do? He's going to tell you, oh, I still have from the same supplier. But maybe it's not true. He's only doing it for you to want to buy more. Even if the buyer praises the seller by telling him that the lot of wheat that I bought from you yesterday was Tavin Havion. They were amazing. And now the wholesaler says, well, I still have more of that. Inun, I have more from the same. One might have thought in that case, he's being dishonest. Kumash Malon, we don't say that. Even when a Jew is not believed when it comes to his level of kashrus, that's because that Jew himself is lax in kashrus. Doesn't mean we don't trust him. In any other area, we trust him. It's a big thing, this. Even when he's saying something which is clearly advantageous for his business, we don't suspect him to lie. Well, and now the Gemara says, let's go on to a case. So we had a palter, we had the manpoil, we had the sitoin. We're going to have now something that the Mishnah never spoke about, but the Gemara is going to bring from a brayso. Funny, we learned in a brayso. And the example we are giving, and I say, give is you're buying wine. Now, a storekeeper, the guy's a storekeeper, even when he sells you in large quantity, just for the record, it's never as large as a wholesaler. But even in a storekeeper, we're going to differentiate between a minor sale and a larger sale. You buy wine from a storekeeper, come back a second time. Today, wine you buy in a bottle. Every nothing has their own bottle, and the bottle is the tinted. Well, who had that then? Then the storekeeper had a barrel. And many times, you, the buyer, you came with your own personal bottle. You would go into this guy's barrel, and you would take wine. Now, we say that every barrel came from another supplier. All right, we can say that. So when I go back into the store, if you remember, a whole different topic. Remember the whole topic in Bava Metzia, that when you find an item, Shavas Haveda, a person has to give a siman. Remember that? And then what happens if someone has Tviyas Ayin? We had that word over there. Tviyas Ayin means that, let's say I found a watch and you saw it. And you say, I know that's mine. And I tell you, give me a siman. You say, I don't have a siman. I recognize it to be mine. So the Gemara says that if that person is known to be a real honest person, person who never lies. I forgot the exceptions. There's coming, right? There are a few exceptions where you could lie. Masechta, what Masechta you're learning? Something about hospitality. Someone asks you, did you just eat by that guy? You don't want to say yes, because then all of the schnutters will want to go eat there. There are certain exceptions where even a person who's really honest, halachically, can be dishonest. Halachically, can deviate. But if someone is known generally to be very honest, Tvias ayin would be good enough. I recognize it. Now here we are applying it to everyone. That if you go into a store and you buy wine from a bottle, and imakir hu es achav yeshihihi, you recognize, you come back that it's the same one. Ma'aseh mimenu alav, you can mix both purchases together, and you can gavaldik. Even though you don't even have to ask the storekeeper, because you recognized it. However, says the Gemara, what does that imply? All right, and which is a chiddush, because a storekeeper doesn't buy from as many sources as a wholesaler, but he does. But he buys from different sources. Says the Gemara, this whole difference between whether you, the buyer, recognize the barrel, recognize the wine or not, is be'ilein idasik rimam. It's only when the storekeeper is selling in very small quantities. When a storekeeper sells in very small quantities, there it is from the beginning already more common that all of the wine in the same barrel came from the same supplier. Someone moves merchandise slowly, everything is smaller. But be'ilein shapoya for storekeepers, but they sell large amounts. You know what they would end up doing? They would, every one barrel comes from one supplier when I, the storekeeper, buy it. But if I'm moving schayda, then at the end of the every day, I'm going to consolidate. I'm going to take the leftovers from this barrel and that barrel. I'm going to put it in one barrel to make room for new barrels. Huh?
It's going to go sour. You cannot mix wines.
Yeah, well, you have to know how it's going to go sour, even if you hold it for a long time. I think things moved very quick then.
But the mixing of wine changes the flavor.
Yeah, that's exactly what they do when they buy it. That's a shira. He tells you they mix the wines perfectly. I have a special concoction for you, and you're going to pay extra for it. But it's common for storekeepers to pour the wine from one barrel into the other. So just because you recognize the barrel, that's not enough. Now, what Kevin is saying is true. You have to know the Gemara is not saying halacha that this, if today no one does it, then it's not relevant today. The Gemara is saying have common sense. When can you rely on tefiyas ayin? When people don't mix barrels with the other, when they do mix, and you're going to tell me first of all that I just for the record, the Braisa never spoke about wine. I'm using wine as an example. Let's speak about other items today. So when do you say that if you notice the box, you can presume that everything that's coming out of the box originated in this box? Maybe the storekeeper mixed from other boxes in this box. Speaking about candies, I'm speaking about munchies. I don't know what came to my mind. Different items. So you have to take that into account. Now, in all of these cases, if you ask the storekeeper, did it come from one supplier or not, you believe him. It's crazy. You ask him, did you separate the tithes? He says yes. You don't believe him. And that's a good thing. It's good to remember that. Go to a person's home and you don't eat there, people get insulted. You're not eating because you don't trust them. You believe them. You don't trust them in kashrus. It's a whole different thing. Because when a person is not practicing a certain standard, because for them it's insignificant, if they would not share the whole truth, they don't see themselves as being dishonest. That's the word. Okay. Moving on to the new halacha for those who are joining in right now.
Add, there's a big difference between maisris, where they're taking value of theirs and giving it away, versus did you get it from the same supplier or not? They're not losing anything if they said yes or no. It's just a matzias. Sure, I did.
Well, I would, Danny, I would argue with Rabbi Yerushalmi's statement that if you're a storekeeper, you, Danny, and I go to you and I tell you, wow, that beef jerky was better than the other ones. and you tell me I have from the same supplier, well, there is an incentive for you to be dishonest because you want to sell more product. And we still believe you. It's real mamonos. That's mamish. The buyer says, the wheat that I bought, yes, that wheat was special. The guy says, no, I still have from the same supplier.
But isn't the onus on the supplier then? Like, if he's telling you and we're supposed to believe him, then it's...
We believe, yeah, sure. Well, no, we don't. So no, a second. So Joey, I want to make a point like this. I'm not looking for someone to go to hell for me. I'm looking to keep kosher. Joey's saying, if we asked him and he said it, so it's on him. I don't need it to be on him. I want to do the right thing. It's important.
I agree.
Okay, good. So that's it. Okay, let's move on. Let's hop on. We have a lot to learn still today. No, sometimes you could. You have to know when you could, when you can't. This is a good topic. If you don't personalize it, if you learn it this time in the morning, it's perfect discussion. No, once you're dealing in a real life scenario, we go nuts because it's very subjective. This is an objective topic about what you believe, when you believe, how you believe, what's the limit of belief. It's amazing. All right, amazing. Okay, we're moving on now a balabas. Halakech mi balabais. So I want you to know like this. When someone has, whether they own a field, whether they own a backyard here in LA, when a balabas is selling, we're not even a store. A guy is selling you a couple of, a couple of tomatoes. This guy has a vegetable patch. Now I want to, whether he's selling it to you from his house, from his yard, whether he's selling it to you from his field, or even more. The guy is traveling, and you met him on the road, and you say, I need a tomato, and the guy sells you a tomato. I'm giving all of these cases to exclude one case. I'm excluding the case where a balabas actually has a booth in the market. That's different. But not in that case. If you buy something from him today, and you buy something from tomorrow, the presumption will be that everything that he sold you was grown in his own property. So it's all coming from the same one Am Haaretz. Obviously, this balabas is a Am Haaretz. And therefore, meyaser mizeh al zeh, a balabas is assumed to grow stuff on his own land. Now, do you say this today to a Californian person who has all of these amazing markets that are so inexpensive? I don't know what you say today. You have to know how to apply it. But then you assume that people grow their own stuff. I really mean it. I don't know if you say this today. Most people that I know, they don't grow their own stuff. They buy a house that has fruit trees, let them live there for a religious Jews. I want to know if their fruit's still growing on your trees. And if it is, it's a miracle. And that is saying for sure. That is saying for sure. I'm talking about me. Your wife grows it. Okay? No, I'm
yes,
not.
We have avocados.
It's amazing. Let's go right. Afilo now, the Chiddush here will be, even if it's coming from two different boxes, or even if you met the same householder in two different cities. Afilo mishtei ayoros, two different cities would mean, I'll tell you Pashit, that this guy has a country house. I don't care if it grew in the same yard. It's about, it came from the same person who halachically is not fully trusted, that he separated all of the tithings. However, but if he's selling it already in the marketplace, that means he's a shtickle business, even if it's a nothing burger business. But he has, once you have a stall, once you have a booth in the marketplace, even if you grow your own product, what do you think you're going to do if you run out of your own product? You're going to turn customers away? Who would do that? No one. Even if you don't make profit, a lost loser, you're gonna just keep your customers coming back. So now it goes like this. When it's known that the workers are constantly bringing his vegetables from his own gardens. Okay. By the way we're going to learn it. The buyer, how do you know? We'll learn. The buyer has to ask the balabas, what's the source? So that's it. And again, we believe him. We don't believe that he tithes, we believe him. Then but if you didn't make such a question, that's the way we'll learn Pshat in the Mishnah, as we'll see tomorrow. But when you don't know, and the presumption of anyone who sells in the market is that when you run out of your own, you're going to get more. The reason why they decided in LA not that long ago that even non-fleishiga places have to have a mashgiach tamidi. The main issue is that when you have a store, customers, if you run out of a product that you need in the kitchen, if you run out of the kosher product, you're never going to want for the customer to be turned away or to have to wait. The manager will go to the neighbor and get whatever is available to fill the order. That's the way it works. That was the biggest hole. And that's the mile of a mashgiach tamidi. When the thing is open, anything that's coming in, he takes a look at. And in other words, if you don't know that it came because you didn't ask him, ma'aseh mikol achas v'achas, because we say, now, what does mikol achas v'achas mean? That's the big question. Okay, from each one, what does each one mean? Does it mean every celery stick? It means every bundle. It means every bundle. That's the understanding, and that will be now the kasha. How do you even know that in the bundle it's coming from the same place? Because maybe, let's say this guy bundled his own. When he runs out of his own bundles, he buys, because vegetables were sold in bundles. I'm going with that. But what were to happen if the bundle gets untied and he has to refill it? What do you think? He's going to refill it all from the same? Why? Okay, that will be the Gemara's kasha. Single bundle is good enough. So Rabbi Yoina, this boy is Akasha. Now, before we're going to learn, I don't mind reading a few words inside, but we're going to have to learn the Pnei Moshe. We have enough time. And we're going to learn a three-way machlokes tanoim in another topic, and then we're going to bring it back over here. Let's read the Gemara, and we're going to go into the Pnei Moshe, who's the most elaborate. Rabbi Yoina boy, ucherad meir, ma'asir mikol kalach v'kalach. How can you say that? How can you say that you could tithe from every bundle separately?
But the whole gino
is maybe hakalach means a bundle, right?
Right, but if all those gina belong to the same owner, why it needs to do from kelach to kelach?
No, that's not a problem. We're saying that I'm a balabas. Let's say I have a booth in the marketplace. The moment I open up a shtickle retail, even if it's a pop-up shop, I no longer have a din of a balabas. There is a halachic possibility that I got it from different sources. So when you buy from me, from every bundle, according to Rav Meir, is it enough from every bundle? What it should be, it should have to be from every store. Why? Because now we're going to quote a Mishnah in Machshirin. Now the Gemara is quoting a little piece because in those days you knew everything by heart. We are almost there, not there, maybe far away from there. So let's read it, Pashit. We learned it when we were in our mother's womb, but we forgot it. So look inside Pnei Moshe, 6th line under the Gemara. Joey, look on the Pnei Moshe. Show them the Pnei Moshe. I want to see 1 line in the Gemara. 1 line under the Gemara in the Pnei Moshe. Someone pointed out there. No, under. The Tanin and Tamon. All right? Good. We learned in the 6th chapter of a tractate called Machshirin. Now, the word machshirin means making something susceptible to becoming tamei. Here's a general rule. When something grows, Joey, listen to the basic rule. Something grows, after you harvested it, it must become wet with one of the 7 halachic liquids. One of the 7 liquids, there are many liquids. There are 7 liquids that halachically are called liquid. Everything else is not called liquid. One of them is water, and saliva is included in the liquid of water. Now, what happens, bedin, and that halikeach agudois yarok mahashuk. When you buy a bundle of vegetables in the market, so the Tanakama says, Kol agudois shall base hashvakim tamei. All of the bundles in the marketplace are already presumed to be tamei. Why? Because he holds that the way you packaging is everything. How do you package vegetables that it should look more attractive? They didn't have boxes then. There was no packaging. The packaging was sprinkling it with water. They did zilo. He says that lefisha hamoichlem regilim lezalef alei mayim. Why? Kedei lelach lechan, to make it moist. Kedei behem, and that's it, to sell it. But now that you made them wet, everyone in the market, most people are tamei. Behem muksharim lekabel tuma. Nepnei shiyad hakoil mamash mishum behem. Even if the grower, the seller is a chaver, but in the marketplace, you think the apple that you bought, you're the first guy that touched it. You understand how many people touched? And therefore, the becheskas tumah. That's the Tanakam. Rabbi Yehuda, the other side. Rabbi Yehuda, mitayr belachin. Certain vegetables, without getting into the details, are already moist enough that they look attractive. The ones that are dead, right? Older people have to put on a lot of makeup, take away the wrinkles. Younger people, they're good. So he goes, it depends. That those types of vegetables, you don't have to sprinkle. That's now Amar Rav Meir. Here we go. Don't. Why are you, the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda, questioning whether the packaging, whether you sprinkle, whether you don't sprinkle? You are ignoring another factor. What's the other factor? There might be saliva, which is also a problem. That you, Rabbi Yehuda, even if it's a type of vegetable, that they already look moist, they already look good. Like today's apples with the wax and all the samhamavas that they put. You don't have to sprinkle it. Looks, right? Then you take it home from over here, anything you buy without mentioning a name. There's a certain market that they lachatchila sell, not B, I already learned C. But they know how to make C look like B. You pay A+, and if you don't eat it today, it's done. It's like the esrog. I don't know, when you buy the esrog, it looks so good. Then all of a sudden, like, what happened? That's what your wife says when she looks at you. You understand? Like, oh, so even if you don't sprinkle, the gilim losses alei mashka, but they would put saliva. Why would they saliva it? Because they would take away the dust. So how would they take away the dust? Of course, how? Not sink. Who sink? When you're not looking, they would pour on their hands and they would saliva it up. They would use their saliva to take away the dust. One second, that's gavaldik. Rabbi, I did that. Now, 1 second. This is so gavaldik. So now let's go to the dot in the Pnei Moshe. Bahashta boy hachem lid av meir the svira lei hasam b'regilim wasei salei mashka peh. Now that we find in that topic that Rav Meir is chayish, that saliva, it was saliva. Is that a word or not? We made it into a word. Dimkein oy bazoi. Now he goes better. What if let's say I have my celery for some reason in my head? Let's say there's a bundle. Let's say there are 10 celeries. Let's say you, the seller, you want to get rid of the dust. You know what you're going to do? You're going to untie the bundle. You're going to go to every celery. You're going to saliva it up. Now we're coming back over here. Who cares if it's coming from the same bundle? How is it enough from the same bundle? Beautiful. Maybe when this seller wanted to make it look fapachket, he packaged it, the stinker, so he spit on it. Now on top of that, he took from one into the other. The Shem Kishamatu Aguda Ma'asroi, then Shema Kelach said Yisr Vekelach Zelo Yisr. That's the kasha. Gavaldik. Let's read it inside. The Tanitama, we learned the Machshir and Rav Meir back in the Gemara. He's telling Rabbi Yehuda, what you're telling me that those vegetables are not sprinkled. Who cares? I got another problem. Because of the saliva. So Rav Meir is chayish for saliva. So now the Gemara asks, come on, the Tamer Tamon, that just like we learned over there, that even if something is agudad in a bundle, nevertheless, litoid, you will unravel it. And then you're going to tie it back. Befiv means with your saliva. Turning to Memches quickly, just a few two lines into it. So we're going to go with the version, not Baram. It's Uf. Kasha is Uf Hache. Is that a Haguda Litoid? And now, when you untie something, you think you're going to tie the same ones back together? What do you care? Kasha. Beautiful. No answer.
Oh, yeah.
And the answer would be, the kid, we got to get, the guy, Yerushalmi does it, is that since it's the Mai, we're lenient. That will be the answer. I want to point out, and Mukhshal Kabul Tuma is not a Derabanan, it's not a Demai, it's a Din Doiraisa. But this is already common. The Gemara doesn't spend an extra word here. Guys, to be continued.
Well, the real question is, how does Reb Meir hold in our Gemara? So
that's the real question. Very good, very good. So, I'm suggesting that L'chora Rav Meir, who talks...
We don't have to be like Reb Meir, Art.
We'll be making over here. With the Mahikil.